Hi, this is Allison of Allison Alyssa Coaching. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Ashley Hoffman, who is the Director of Communications and Marketing for Brazen Careerist. If you haven't heard of Brazen Careerist, it's a great resource that offers career tips, virtual career fairs, and courses, all designed to help you attain a job you love. And they can be found at www.brazencareerist.com. So welcome, Ashley. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm very interested to learn more about your career path.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. This is fun.
Great. So the first question is, as Director of Communications and Marketing, what is it that you do on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. Well, I joined Brazen Careerist about a little over a year ago, almost a year and a half ago. And my role initially was marketing and communications, and I've since grown that a little bit to include strategic partnerships. So a lot of what I do now is focused both on marketing in kind of the traditional digital marketing sense, so doing stuff with our website, tracking the clicks and the open rates on our emails, so doing a lot of email marketing, doing some kind of public relations communication, so responding to press and getting us stories when we need them. And then a big part of our portfolio now is partnerships. And basically that means you can be creative. It's almost like business development, that you think of companies, entities, organizations that together you can create some project, whether it's something you each already have in your portfolio or something that you can create together that achieves mutual goals. So partners for us has been really key in the past 6 months, and we've had some really successful events with partners that we've reached out to.
And what are your favorite parts of your job?
I'm kind of in, my weakness is that I probably have too much on my mind at all times in terms of sometimes I don't focus enough, but that's also what I like, and it can be my strength. So I like the fact that in my job, at any given time, I usually have, 8 tabs open on 3 different browsers, and I'm doing, 4 different things. So I really, because our company does 3 primary things, like you mentioned, virtual career fairs, courses and trainings, and our blog, I'm really able to work on all 3 of those things and do lots of different things for each one. So really the ability to kind of work on tons of different projects, and also for a small company, so you can really take the lead in ways that you probably couldn't at a larger company. So it's definitely something I love about the job.
Yeah, the variety and the responsibility sound like a nice combo.
Yes, yep. It's a lot of fun, and it never gets boring.
Nice. So you mentioned a little bit that you kind of recently come to Brazen Careerist. How did you get into the field of marketing? Was it something that you always wanted to do, or that you kind of discovered bit by bit?
Sure. I'm from Iowa, and initially I moved out to D.C. to pursue PR work in think tanks that did foreign policy or national security work. I was a double major in college. I graduated 6 years ago. That's scary. I graduated 6 years ago, and doing journalism and international studies. So I always loved kind of the marriage of the two, like the substantive topics of, China and India and Afghanistan, but also the function of the communication angle of that. So for about 5 years, I started as an intern. I was hired kind of the story, you intern, they hire you. Then I hopped jobs about 3 times, and always actually because a mentor of mine, who was my first boss when I was an intern, kind of was always one step ahead of me. She would leave before me, and then she would recruit me to come to her next organization. And it's kind of worked out well, but it definitely stresses the importance of maintaining relationships and keeping in touch with contacts, because you never know, even if they leave a company, that they could help you get your next job. So I did that for about 5 years. I loved it. I still do have a passion for those issues, but I just wanted something a bit more creative and that would allow me to be a little more creative. Think tanks are great, government's great, but it can be a little not to use the bad word I'm looking for, but just, there's not as much room for innovation. And so same mentor that had pulled me to previous jobs also had made a move to New York and was starting with Raising Careerists as a consultant and knew they needed someone to do marketing. And so I actually just took the risk, and I kind of surprised myself with even the decision to do it. And the first week I probably cried twice. But
yeah, change is hard.
Yes, it is. I actually had a mentor once that said, like, the goal of your first 6 weeks of a new job is to, like, just get to the car to the office door without crying. And then the goal in your second 6 weeks is to, like, not call your parents once a week. And the goal, and, like, it's just, it's always, and if you don't feel that way, it's probably not good enough because it means that you are not challenged and not scared. And initially that fear and, kind of scary thing is good because it means you chose something that is a challenge and that you'll learn a lot. So that's how I got here.
Yeah. I really like that advice. I talk to a lot of people about transition, and even when you move to a good place, it's just hard. And so I really like that advice, just to get the car to the office. That's a good tip.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's comforting to know that everyone feels that way. I mean, no one that I talk to, at least, when you say, how's your new job? It's like, oh, I like it. And then it's like, well, how do you really like your new job? It's like, well, it's kind of scary. They're asking a lot of me, and I don't know if I can do it, and this kind of thing. But that's all good because eventually you will learn how to do all those things, and you will get into the groove, and it just means that you've accepted a new learning curve and a challenge, and that's always been the thing I've looked for in new jobs is to learn a lot.
Excellent. So what aspect of your work has surprised you the most, either in a good way or in a bad way?
I mean, I have come, so when I used to do PR for think tanks, I worked for very established, Washington institutions that had histories of processes and a role. Everyone, every task had a person to do it, and roles were clearly defined. And I think initially coming to Brazen, it's definitely a startup mode, that it's more organized chaos and it's more testing, and you are working on one thing, but it may be proven in 3 months that it may not work and you may shift. So initially I think that was a little surprising, coming into a place where there's not as much establishment or history, but it ends up being what I like most about the job, and that there's a real opportunity to innovate and try new things, and we're not afraid of failure, and we're always testing. And that's something that I think once I now have this experience, I'd bring anywhere, and that even if you go back to the more established companies, getting that startup experience is so good because you learn all of these tools and methods that should really be applied in a lot of different companies.
Very cool. So how does your education matter in terms of the work that you do? Like, does it relate to your degree?
I think it does matter. A lot of people don't think that journalism degrees are useful, and they may think, media is changing. You can't be a newspaper reporter. 20 years ago it was hard to eat being a newspaper reporter, and now it's like you don't even have a job. It's not even that you're not getting paid well. It's just that there's not a job for you. But that being said, I think journalism degrees are so beneficial because if you think about it in a new way, and I feel like that new way is really just learning how to, it's the most pragmatic degree you can get in terms of it'll teach you how to write succinctly, persuasively. It'll teach you how to get people interested in what you're writing with like a hook and the way you have to write a story and how to communicate. And I think so whenever I hire interns or we're thinking about adding to our team, those are like the two big things that speak to me. Can the person read and write well? And because you're going to be doing that every single day in your job, especially with email now and how most work is done over email, that you have to be able to have those skills. So I don't think it is certainly it's not a prerequisite for my job by any means, but I think it has been absolutely useful in how I approach my work.
Sure, the skill of being able to write is so universal to so many different fields.
Yes, exactly. Every job you have, you're going to have to write write a report, write a memo, do, even just methodology for writing and the research, I think, is just a very practical skill that I think there are a lot of non-practical degrees you can get, but this is one that, even though there may not be a direct correlation, it's the context that you're given with that degree is so useful.
Excellent. So what environmental factors have you found to have the greatest impact on your job satisfaction, like coworkers or compensation, the company culture, flexibility? What sorts of things impact your job satisfaction the most?
I think with every job it's different. I don't really have one thing that, depending on if that factor is present or not present, means I'm happy or not happy in all my jobs. I think each job you kind of learn the strengths and the weaknesses of, and then you kind of learn to like what you have. So for this job, for example, has been the most flexible job in terms of they're less concerned that you're in the office from 9 to 5 and more concerned about your output. So other jobs, maybe I had a more stringent work schedule in the sense of I'd get in at 9 and I'd leave at 6. But this job, I may get in at 9:30, I may leave at 5, but then I may be online from 7 to 10, and then I may be working, one weekend all day and then leave early Friday. So it's something that a lot of companies are starting to go to, is flexible work schedules, and as long as once the person can prove that they're working and they have a high output, why be concerned about their work hours as much? So flexibility is definitely something that I think is a big part of startup culture and a big part of even really Gen Y in the workforce. And so that's probably the thing that, beyond like all the qualitative benefits of just the fact that I love the content that I work on and I love my colleagues and I love what I'm personally doing in our company. I mean, that's kind of more like a side benefit, I'd say. That's really cool.
Yeah, it sounds like the autonomy to do your work when it's convenient to you and to have that personal freedom can be a benefit.
Yes, definitely.
So I have one final question, and I realize it's kind of broad, and the Brazen Careerist or Brazen Life blog handles this question in much more detail, but do you have any career advice that you would like to pass on to others?
Sure. Just try to make a lot of money. No, I'm kidding. I would say that my advice would be to try to be, instead of trying to ask yourself, like, am I happy? Because happiness is such an elusive term, and a lot of people don't even know what makes them happy. But try to ask yourself if you're learning. When you try to think about if you like your job, or if it's time to look for a new job, or if you're assessing whether or not a job offer will be the right fit for you. Because ultimately, a lot of people, I think, are their happiest when they're learning a lot, because they're thinking, they're getting to know themselves, they're thinking through questions, they're excited about their work. So I would say whenever you're looking for a job or assessing anything, try to look at what you're learning, if you're challenged, if you don't like the job because you don't know how to do something, and how you can maybe get the right resources that you can feel better about the challenge that you have. And just always ask yourself if you're learning. And if you're not, then that should help inform your decision on whether or not to look for a new opportunity.
I think that's a really relevant advice. I think what you spoke about, happiness can be elusive, and I imagine in the midst of a challenge you might be rather unhappy or it could be hard. But I think by seeking challenges and successfully meeting them, that's where we gain pride and self-confidence, and like the reward is more at the end of that. Exactly.
I mean, don't quit when it's really hard. Finish it out, and then look back, and you'll probably find yourself happy with the result, even if you didn't necessarily succeed. If you learn something, and the next time around you will be successful, that is success. Not to sound cliche, but it is true a lot of times. So don't be afraid of that.
Well, Ashley, it was lovely to get to know you and to hear your story today. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you. Anytime. And, good luck to everyone And, yeah, check out Brazen Careers if you'd like, www.brazencareers.com. Thanks, Allison.